Hi there, it's Lara here with the second video on Chiron. So if you're just seeing this and you didn't watch the other video on Chiron, then I suggest that you watch that one first. It's called Chiron Growing Stronger in the Broken Places. So that would be the place to start because that will give you some background information and the basics, and then come back to this video after that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time watching this. I really appreciate it. I really would appreciate it if you haven't already. If you would subscribe to my channel, you can do that by clicking on the red button below the video, or there is a little black button right in the video at the bottom right corner that you can click on as well. And you can subscribe, and that way you don't miss future videos, and including Witchy Wednesday, which I do every Wednesday. I put out a video that's all about the pertinent astrology for the week, and I draw a card for us as well. So, but in this video, I'm going to mostly talk about Chiron's move into Aries, which is going to be happening on April 17th. So coming up very soon. I'm recording this on April 6th, 2018, and so we will be having this shift very soon. Just to give you a bit of a recap, though, Chiron in our birth chart represents the area where we have a deep spiritual wound, right? Chiron is known in astrology as the wounded healer, because it's this area where we have wounding that, will never really heal in the sense that we can't erase it, right? There will always be some evidence of it there. And it can be an area of life where we feel a bit isolated, a bit like the black sheep, perhaps even a bit ashamed. It can be where we have been caught in the crossfire of somebody else's battle. And so we are, have experienced some collateral damage. It can be, just where there have been circumstances outside our control that we've been subjected to, and we have this deep spiritual wounding as a result, right? It can be something, can be an area where we kind of suffer in silence too, and but ultimately it can bring us our greatest superpowers, because if we choose to address our Chiron wounding, then we become much more resilient and stronger and better able to cope and able to help others. And in helping others, we ultimately help ourselves. And so that's what Chiron points to in our birth chart. And as I said in the last video, you always have the choice whether you choose to address and accept that wounding wherever it is for you, or whether you choose to, to deny it or put on some rose-colored glasses and perhaps just repress it, or perhaps maybe aren't even consciously aware of it, and that can happen. But I think that if you're here watching this, that bodes well, because I think obviously you have some kind of notion, right, that there is something more, and that you're willing and open to hear these things, and perhaps entertain these things, and perhaps you've had a bit of an aha moment or a spiritual awakening yourself, and or you're just curious and you're here. So thank you for being here once again. So I'm going to just show you the chart for April 17th, when Chiron is making its move into Aries. And I'll put it up close. I know it's a little bit dark. This is Chiron, and you can see it's at 0 degrees of Aries, and that will be on April 17th, 2018. So that means that right now, Chiron is making its move through the last degree of Pisces, which is the critical degree of Pisces. The last degree of any sign is called the critical degree, right? It's right at the end. And because Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, it's sort of, the end before the new beginning. It's the old wizard, or that kind of thing. Whereas Pisces is the infant. Sorry, Aries is the infant of the zodiac. So at this last degree of the last sign, we are experiencing perhaps this final letting go in this area of our chart. So wherever Pisces is for you, whatever house Pisces falls in your chart, is where you may be experiencing this final letting go, this culmination of this healing cycle. Perhaps having some salt rubbed in the wound, even, or this final purging of poison, that kind of thing. And so, if you've watched Witchy Wednesday videos, you've seen me show you the charts before. If you've had a reading with me, you've seen your chart. I've given it to you, right? And these are the different astrological houses, right? And each of these represents a different life area, a life theme. And so if you've had a reading, at the beginning of the reading, I always give a little Astrology 101 lesson. And so it puts things in context. And you have your own chart, so you can take a look when I'm talking about these things. And you can look at where Chiron is in your chart. And you can look at what house Pisces falls in for you. And you can then get a better idea of what life area this is playing out for you in, right? And so Chiron has been in Pisces for about the last 7 years, because it spends more time in Pisces and Aries than it does in any other sign of the zodiac. It has a very irregular orbit, and it takes about 50 years to come back to the place it was when you were born. But it spends different amounts of time in each sign. And so when you're around 50, 51, you will experience your Chiron return, which means that Chiron will be back in the place it was when you were born. And so it's this idea of kind of getting the second chance at facing our Chiron wounding. And if we haven't done the work, it may be midlife crisis time, or, difficult aging. And if we have done the work, fantastic, we're in a good position to move forward and be empowered, in those years after 50, and to really step into our role as a wise person and a teacher of others and a helper and a healer of others in whatever way we do that, right? And so, but ultimately the choice is ours. And I want to say to you that regardless of how old you are, you can always, it's never too late, right? You can always decide that you are going to deal with your crap at any point. The choice is ours, right? That you're going to face it. You're going to courageously go there and deal with it, and admit it and accept it, and do whatever it takes to really address that wounding, right? Wherever it is that we are wounded. And so with Chiron being in Pisces for the last 7 years, I'm going to give you a personal example. For me, that's been in my 7th house, which is the house of close personal relationships. And it's the house of contracts. It's also known as the house of open enemies. So, the enemies that kind of people that who are, you openly know that they don't like you, or they have it out for you, or they want your job, or whatever it is, kind of thing. So I have experienced a lot, like I've experienced a healing journey through the 7th house these last 7 years, in the area of close personal relationships. I've had a lot of changes in this area, and a lot of things have been brought to light and been sort of churned up for me to deal with and to investigate, really to look at and to accept and to admit and to acknowledge and to do the best I can to work through that. So, there's been a letting go in some areas and a culmination a culmination in some areas, but also a cultivating, of new relationships that have come in over the course of time, and some touchy, ouchy things that have gone on that I've had to endure and deal with in my close personal relationships. But, it's never Chiron's never here to go, to hurt us intentionally. That's not what it's about. It's trying to make us a better, more powerful, stronger, more a person in integrity, a person aligned with our soul, a person who has dealt with their shadow and is not afraid of it, and can therefore empower others and help others, and can help themselves by helping others, right? So wherever Pisces is in your chart is the area of life that you will have experienced this last healing cycle. And you may be having this last sort of push at the end of the sign here for either a letting go or things, some final things being stirred up for you to face and deal with, that kind of thing. And on a collective level, as Pisces has been in as Chiron, has been in the sign of Pisces, we can see how that's played out in, for example, Pisces is a very spiritual sign, right? And so there's been a lot of spiritual awakening among people that has gone on. People have awakened to the fact that, there's more to life than just walking around being a zombie, right? It's like there's more meaning. They've awakened to their spiritual side, and so, and we can see there's been like a real expanding of issues around spirituality and spiritual healing, and alternative healing modalities have been really big. And also, if we look at the fact that Pisces is a water sign and it is ruled by Neptune, god of the seas, and we can look at all the issues that have come to the forefront in terms of our wounded water systems, our very wounded oceans that need our help. They need to be healed, right? The backlash on bottled water, the giant rafts of garbage floating in the oceans and affecting marine life, the water is life movement, right? The lack of clean and safe drinking water in all kinds of places, indigenous communities, that kind of thing. All of this has been stirred up for us to look at. It's not pretty. It's not always pretty, right? When Chiron shows us our wounding, but if we have the courage to go there and to look at it and to face it, then we can help and we can make it better, and it can empower us. We can do, good things. So with Chiron moving into Aries, what we are going to experience on a collective level is the call to healing of our identities. Aries as an energy is very much about the self, right? I think I mentioned it's the infant of the zodiac. So if you think about a baby, their main focus is getting their needs met, right? And they don't have a lot of awareness of anything but the self. And so Aries is very much that energy. It's very instinctual. It's very impulsive. It can be also it can be a pioneer, but it can also be and quite intuitive as well, and just sort of, just going for it without kind of thinking about the consequences or planning it out or anything. Can also be quite aggressive and warlike and taking what isn't rightfully belonging to it. That can be Aries energy too, on sort of the lower octave, right? Lashing out without really much conscious awareness of how that might impact others. And so on a collective scale, we will see these themes. The last time Chiron was in Aries was late 60s to 1977, so 68 to 77. And, themes of individual rights and freedoms were huge. We did see a lot of rebellion and uprising and some violence, but also a lot of self-empowerment. And, we kind of see this both sides of the Aries energy, right? And so we will likely see this kind of thing again play out over this Aries cycle over the next 8 years while Chiron is in Aries. And Chiron will go into Aries on April 17th. It will retrograde back into Pisces around September, and then it will make its final move back into Aries in February 2019. And so we will experience this back and forth. I personally have Chiron at 1 degree Aries, so this is going to be going back and forth over this point in my chart for the next while, which will be interesting, I'm sure. I feel hopefully that I'm prepared, but who knows? And I'll keep you posted. It'll be a bit of an experiment, and you'll get to see how it goes. But we will get this first taste of what we might expect over this Aries cycle in terms of the healing cycle for us, right? Like where things need to be healed for us at this point in time in our lives. And so really, as I mentioned, this is all about healing our identity, healing the self-healing. It's about owning our right to exist. It's about not apologizing for who we are. It's about addressing those wounds of not feeling good enough, not feeling like we measure up, of feeling like we have to pretend to be something that we aren't, of detaching from our instincts and our intuition. These can all be things that we need to heal in ourselves, right? It's time to step into our badass selves and to really be vulnerable and to just put it out there and to claim our individual rights and freedoms, but not in sort of the lower vibrational Aries way, not in this completely self-absorbed, selfish way, not in the warlike, aggressive way necessarily, not like that, but in the self-caring, self-compassion, admitting our desires and that it's okay to want certain things and that we have personal needs that need, addressing, and that we matter too, as much as everybody else in our lives and in the world. And to also, use our individuality for the greater good, right? And in healing our own trauma in that area, like with Chiron, the trauma becomes the teacher, right? So healing our own trauma in that area of the self, of not feeling good enough, of feeling like we can't be ourselves, or afraid to be ourselves. People won't like us if we're ourselves, that we don't measure up to others, that we don't have a right to an opinion, all kinds of things like that. That one person can't make a difference. That's another big one, right? It will be a time of just of exploring that and realizing that in fact one person can make a huge difference, and that we need to stop feeling like, I'm just one person, I can't do anything about the problems of the world or my own life or my own family. Yeah, one person can make a huge difference, because if every person addresses their own crap and their own need to be validated, and their own, if they care for themselves and they focus on being well and strong and in integrity and aligned and following their instincts and trusting themselves in ways that are really self-empowering and don't damage others. Imagine what the world would look like if we all loved ourselves, right? Imagine. Huge, huge. So I think that, I'm going to leave it there, and just encourage you to think about where it might be in your own life and in your own way that you have this wounding of the self, right? And what in your life, like, what can you do, or what needs to be addressed, or where are you feeling inadequate or afraid, like you don't have the right to be yourself, or you don't deserve, to be happy and cared for, and all of those things that, look at your own personal situation and think about that. And then what might you do? One small thing, right? What might you do to start addressing that in your own life? And again, it will kind of play out in a specific, it'll be more concentrated in a specific life area for you. So maybe it's like at work. If Chiron is in your house of career, for example, then maybe it's at work that you feel like you can't be yourself, or you're in a job that you really can't stand, and you feel like you can be who you are, and it's not really speaking to who you are as an individual, and your voice is not being heard, all of these things. Maybe that's where it's going to play out and needs addressing and needs healing for you over this next 8-year cycle. That's just one example, right? But if you do want a personal reading with me, I remind you that you can follow the link below, and if you choose to get a reading, then you'll have a copy of your birth chart, and you'll see the different where the different planets fall and the different houses and that kind of thing. I think I mentioned in the last video, considering doing a reading that is more focused on Chiron. So if you might be interested in that, let me know, because I'd like to gauge interest for sure. But I leave you with, just, I'm going to say it again. Imagine what the world would look like if we all were okay with who we are, and we all loved ourselves. Imagine. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I so appreciate it. Please remember to subscribe. I'd love to know what you think. And please reach out. There's links below to Facebook, to Instagram, to my website, whatever. And I would love to hear from you. Okay? Take care. Bye-bye.